So in this case, it's important that we check the input of our user. So we can use the following example. So the getInt function continues to ask for a number until the user responds yes using the following loop. But why not use this one instead of the other one, which requires the user to input yes or no? Yes, as compared to the other one, which requires the user to input no. If that will be the case, the user must enter an incorrect response to continue a loop tested with the following Boolean operation, which of course is quite confusing. On the other hand, if we are going to use this approach, then the user must enter a correct response in order to end the loop tested with answer of yes. And there will be times that we might mix cin and cin.get to get input from our user. Of course, we must be sure to deal with the new line character that ends each input line if we are going to use cin and cin.get. So in this case, we are talking about the cin extraction operator and of course the member function get that also comes with cin. As we can see here, the cin extraction operator reads up to the new line, and of course the new line remains in the input stream. Using cin.get next will read the new line character, and of course we will see how it works by taking a look at an example. And of course, from example 5.7, the new line function from our example can be used to clear the new line character, just like this one. Okay, as we can see here, we used this function to get rid of the new line character. So therefore, although it remains in the input stream, it will not be considered as part of our actual input. Here's an example which involves the new line character. So for example, we have the following code which says cout and then the following string that we would like to output. Then we would like to receive an input from a user and then stored in this variable of integer data type. Then we will output another one, in this case a prompt which asks the user for an input of character data type. So if we are going to run this, this is what will happen: a comparison between cin extraction operator and cin.get function. So this is what happened. For example, the user entered 21 and then the user entered another, which is the letter A. But if we will take a look at the contents of our variable, this is actually what happened. For the first input, the number 21 was successfully derived from the user input. However, after the user pressed enter after the input of 21, the new line character is still in our input stream. And if we are going to use cin.get, of course, it will get whatever remains in our input stream. And this time, the new line character is still there. So therefore, the symbol variable here will contain the value of a new line character instead of the letter A. So that's the trouble that we might encounter. That's why we must be careful whenever we are using the get function. So here's a fix to remove the new line character. In this case, instead of using the get function, we use the cin extraction operation instead. So in this case, the new line character has been discarded, it has been ignored, and therefore our new input can be properly received by our variable such as this one. And we have another fix. For example, if we can't avoid using the get function, then we can simply use a function such as the one that we have in example 5.7, in which we get rid of the new line character and we still have the same result as we have seen in the previous slide. So that's another way that we can get rid of the new line character and correctly receive the input from our user. And when we are dealing with input, it's also important for us to detect the end of a file. So last time, we've already had an example which involves reading a file, and in that case, we're only using a single character input until there's no more input that can be read from the file. So we simply use an input stream, then we can keep on reading our input file and until such time that no input can be received from our stream. And another way to do that is by using the member function end of file, which of course detects the end of a file. It's also a member function of every input file stream, and it stands for end of file. And EOF returns a Boolean value. In this case, it returns true when the end of the file has been reached, and it returns false when there is more data to read, which means we still haven't reached the end of file for our input. It is normally used to determine when we are not at the end of the file. For example, this Boolean statement tells us that if it is not the end of file, then we can continue executing whatever statement is under this if statement. So how do we use EOF or end of file? So here's an example. So this loop reads each character and writes it to the screen. So for example, we have an input file. There we have an input stream. Then we will call the get function and then place whatever is the content that was received from the input stream into this variable. Then we keep on doing this until such time that the end of file character has been reached. But in this case, while the character that was read from our input stream is not the end of file character, then we keep on doing this until such time that we reach the end of file. And in that case, we now received the end of file character. In this case, this Boolean statement becomes false when the program reads past the last character in the file, which is of course the end of file character. The end of file character is indicated by a special character. For example, this statement is still true after the last character of data is read. It's because the end of file character is different. So therefore, we must first go past the last character in our input file until we reach the end of file character. So it becomes false when the special end of file character is reached. So how do we test end of file? So we have already seen two methods. This is the first method that we had, in which we keep on reading our input stream until no character can be read from our input. And the other method is, of course, to keep on reading our input file while the character is not the end of file. But which one should be used? In general, We can use the end of file when input is treated as text and using a member function get to read input. So that's the case here. If you are going to use the member function get, then it only makes sense that you use the method which utilizes the end of file character. On the other hand, we use the extraction operator when processing numeric data, so such as the first example that we have. So here's another example. Okay, so it will demonstrate some of the routines that we have learned so far with regards to end of file characters. So what it will do is it will read an input file cad.dat, cad.dat, and copies it to file c plus add.dat, but this time all occurrences of the character C is changed to C++ and it is written back in a file C plus ad.dat. And of course, it will preserve whatever line break is in the original file. Okay, so we have the following function. Get is used for input as the extraction operator would skip line breaks, and get is used to preserve spaces as well. So what will happen is only the C characters will be changed to C++. So let's take a look at the example. So here's example 5.8. So again, we have the following function, add++. So it expects two formal parameters. Okay, we have our input file and our output file. And let's take a look at our main function. Okay, so this is where we open our input file, and of course it will be tested if the file is indeed present. Same also with our output file. And then finally, this is where we are going to manipulate the contents of our input file and write it back to our output file. So let's take a look at the details of the add++ function, and here it is. Okay. So as you can see here, it will use the file that was provided as an argument whenever it is called. So our input file will be read one character at a time using the get function, and while we have not reached the end of file character, we will keep on reading the file, and whenever we see an occurrence of C, that will be replaced with C++ and written back to our output file as provided here in our argument. So that will keep on repeating until the end of file character is reached. So let's take a look at our input file, which is this one. Okay. So we have the following. So what our program will do is it will replace every C with C++ and retaining everything else. So let's take a look and run the program. Okay, so the program was able to execute successfully, and let's take a look at our output file. So our output file is this one, the C plus add.dat. So let's take a look what our program did. So there it is. Every occurrence of C has been replaced with C++.